My name's Matt Lees, and this is a video about Transistor, which is a ludicrously lovely looking strategy action thing made by the people behind Bastion, a game which famously told the story of a boy who was constantly being watched by a creepy old man in a cloud. So, Transistor, is it good? Well, yes, it's lovely. It's like walking through an abstract acrylic painting while a lady with a nice voice occasionally wistfully hums in the background. Aesthetically, it's just a consistent treat. The vast combination of skills you can combine all have their own visual flourishes, with the strategic element of the combat being painted as something far less mechanical than it actually is. Fights can often look like a blur, but the clarity of design and naturally the ability to freeze time and chain together attacks as a sequence of moves ensures that the style doesn't piss on the chips of substance. But is it good, Matt? Well, sometimes, yes. Now, I'm not fond of the overly enigmatic nature of the narrative, even though in theory it should be right up my street. But despite the efforts to create this fleshed out idea of what the dystopia you're exploring used to be like, it always feels slightly too alien to grasp, juggling ideas that are always exciting, but somehow too difficult to pin down to create a world that feels concrete. The emotional aspect of the story feels real, but the sense of place just isn't quite there, despite the amazing art style and the decent writing that aims to support it. So you've got this narrative about the city changing and slipping away somehow, but without having a strong sense of quite what it was like before. It's a transition that lacks much narrative impact. Having said that, as a point of reference, I felt exactly the same way about Bastion, a game I very much enjoyed, but couldn't quite love. But Matt, is it good? Is it good, Matt? Well, sort of. Yes, it's a game that's very, very clever. Real-time combat always remains an option, but the meatiest potatoes are in the freezy, timey strategy bits. You chain together a sequence of actions which are then carried out almost instantaneously. Once you've spaffed your special moves out, you've then got to try and do your best to stay out of trouble until the cooldown wears off and you can do it all again. It's a brilliant system in theory, but somehow doesn't manage to feel elegant, particularly when a lot of the time the best strategy in a battle is to just go and run away and hide until your bar comes back. And I mean, this loop of attacking and then retreating isn't bad design in itself, but it just feels a bit like you're cheating the system. It doesn't feel like that's the way you're supposed to play. When you chain these things together, you're always informed of the likely outcome of the stuff that you've just chained up. But one of my favourite things about Transistor is how fallible this system is. It won't account for the likelihood that an enemy will cloak or teleport away, or even just move slightly out of the way. Which means when you start to get a better understanding of the different enemy types and the way your moves are likely to affect them, you'll have the confidence to aim your final move into thin air, safe in the knowledge that by that point there will be something there to smash. And in the same way that all good action games will give you a sense of progression, not just in terms of the power of the moves at your disposal, but an understanding of how they work, an understanding of how the enemies will react to things, it does a fairly good job of tying that stuff together. And then you've got this notably bonkers system that means every potential weapon you find can also be used as a unique buff for every other weapon, or used to give your character a passive boost. You're restrained by the overall cost of what you've chosen to equip, but how you choose to build your moveset is almost overwhelmingly flexible. And Transistor's greatest strength by far is the way it enforces its own sense of balance, punishing you for putting all of your eggs into one basket by temporarily short-circuiting the most powerful combination of stuff that you currently have equipped every time your health hits zero. So technically you can spend a vast quantity of your total percentage of stuff you can equip, which is done using traditional little energy bar stuff, and then you can get killed once in a battle and lose almost everything. And if you're as masochistic as I am when it comes to loading up on the unlockable XP boosters that make the game incrementally harder, then Transistor does become a pleasantly tough game. The eureka moment of all of this pops in when you start short-circuiting a lot of your best stuff and basically find yourself forced to play around with combining things you might not have otherwise touched. This, combined with the challenge rooms that specifically nudge you to experiment with different weapons and try out new things, ensures that the noggin-boggling selection of stuff that you can potentially do doesn't get sidelined by familiarity. And you know, it's very, very close to being actual genius, but falls short of the mark for one simple reason. Regular autosaves means it isn't much of a fuss to simply reload the game whenever your best stuff gets short-circuited. Now listen, this might sound cheap and some people might just say, well, don't do it, don't load your save. But by the later stages of the game, losing your most effective attack during the middle of a battle makes the game tougher in a way that just isn't entertaining. Because it isn't really a traditional action game, being up against the ropes in this way isn't a way of encouraging you to bring out your A game and pull off some mad skills. It just leaves you chipping away at gigantic health bars with moves that just aren't much use on their own, and then scurrying away and hiding while your cooldowns wear off. You also end up needing to approach different enemy types with completely different movesets, which is awesome for maintaining the sense of variety throughout the game, which it largely does need to keep things entertaining. But eventually it does lead to walking into a new area, realizing that the fight you're about to do is going to be hellishly slow with what you've got currently equipped, and deciding that it's probably best to just hit escape and load the last save. And I've got to make it clear that this isn't about gaming the system. It's not about cheating and reloading to make the game easier. It's just when it's difficult in this way, it's just not very fun. And you know what? The most interesting thing about Transistor is this, because Transistor is a reminder that while risk and reward remains at the core of most truly great games, hinging that around punishing players for failure in an interesting and game-affecting way doesn't work if players still have the option to easily circumvent the punishments that they've just been dealt. It's a fascinating reminder that save systems, despite being something that we just think of now as being bread and butter, are a game mechanic in themselves, and in this case one that jars with otherwise excellent design. So while the combat is still quite fun, the complexity and ambition of Transistor systems leave it feeling faintly unfinished when compared to the well-oiled, more simple mechanics in Bastion. That isn't to say that anything about the execution here is sloppy or rough, it just struggles to find the truly elegant design within its own spiderweb of exciting ideas. But Matt, is it a good game? Is it good? Will I like it, Matt? Well, you might, yeah. If you're a sucker for stuff that looks and sounds swish, and you enjoy a cheeky little tug of the heartstrings, you'll get a kick out of this, providing you do also like strategy-based action games that require a degree of patience. If those things make sense, then yes, this is a good game. I enjoyed it. I had a nice time. I appreciated its efforts to be interesting and clever, but much like Bastion, it didn't really stay with me. It didn't get under my skin, and I didn't find the combat interesting enough to make me feel like I wanted to play it again. And all of this is weird because I so badly wanted it to. I love the premise, I love the setting, I love the character design, I love the art style, I love the ideas that run through Transistor. But while it's a fascinating game, it's just not great. But is it good, Matt? Yes, it's quite good. Bye!